Hello there, welcome to Nerd.World Films, and today I'm carrying on the new tradition of not being able to use my camera. So prepare for a slightly echoey video because I don't have a particularly good place to be recording right now, but this is irrelevant, and today's Nerd Talk is on a subject that lingers in the back of my mind, mostly as a sort of fan fiction, but also as an interesting topic of discussion, and that is the Cylons and the Terminators. Now of course, within the sci-fi universe there are a lot of different overlaps and other such things, shared ideas, borrowed ideas, homages to ideas, etc, etc, etc. But I can't help but notice the similarities between these two different belligerents. They both hate humanity, they both are determined to wipe out humanity, and this is the same in any incarnation that we have seen. In either the Terminator 2 Judgment Day, any of the less than stellar sequels, except for Salvation. I kind of like that one. I don't like Genesis. Anyway, getting off topic. As well as in Battlestar Galactica 1979, and of course in the reimagined 2004. The 2004 series in particular, Cylons have a lot more in common with the Terminators. Now in terms of physical appearance, of course a Centurion and a T-800 are pretty different. Aside from the general silhouette of both being humanoid and bipedal, they aren't quite exactly the same. One is a humongous killing machine which is designed to double as an infiltration unit and can have cyber-organic tissue grafted onto its endoskeleton to allow it to camouflage itself as a human, whereas the Cylons just went the next step and just created biomechanical infiltrators that appeared externally and internally to be completely human, at least superficially. You can tell off the bat these two belligerents, as I said, have quite similar MOs. So I'm going to break them down, talk about it, and hear your thoughts. Before I forget, please like, share, subscribe, and comment down below, and also check out my other channel, Nerd.World, where there is a much more extensive Battlestar Galactica playlist if Battlestar Galactica is something you're interested in, but stay on this channel if you want more Terminator content somewhere down the line, because I don't think I've done any yet. Oh wait, I have. I'm getting distracted. I do that a lot in these videos. These videos generally are of a more relaxed format. I don't often, or at least not anymore, really go into as much detail of lore and other such things. I tend to prefer to just sit and chat. And you like it, you hate it, whichever. Stay for the commentary and the bad puns. So let's start with the Terminators of the much loved Terminator franchise, helmed originally of course by James Cameron and starring Arnold Schwarzenegger and Michael Biehn, as well as the amazing Sarah Connor, yes, Linda Hamilton. Sorry, I can't help myself. I mean, realistically, without the camera I could do anything. It's only up to you. I don't even have to get dressed to do these videos now, so it's up to your wild imagination as to what could be going on behind this microphone. I wouldn't think about that too much. Anyway, the Terminators. In a distant future of 1997, the world had been plunged into nuclear apocalypse because an AI computer went rogue and decided that all of humanity was its enemies. It tried a nuclear holocaust, that didn't work, and tried to round up the survivors with automated machines that had eventually been built to fight human wars. Built in automated factories, partially by human slave labour, it evolved, eventually developing machines that could do the work for it as well, early version Terminators that would eventually, through the line, become the now famous T-800 Cyberdyne Systems Model 101, Arnold Schwarzenegger, Sergeant Candy. And of course they would evolve beyond this. These T-800s were an evolution over the previous generations of Terminators that used synthetic rubber and other materials to try and appear human, but were not, of course, convincing in any way, as well as not being as intelligent to be able to fake it as easily as other models. The T-800 was much more able to camouflage, even using profanity and slang, in order to better camouflage itself, at least in short bursts amongst humans when it didn't want to reveal its presence. But these were basic robotic machines that did a job that was a little more than A to B and were amazing, and were a serious threat to the survival of the human race. systematically wiping out everyone in their path. Man, woman, child, didn't matter. Their goal was to wipe out the human race. Notable similarities between them and the Cylons are, of course, they're big, they're metal, they're robots, they have red eyes, and they also have another thing that sort of sparked my interest in this topic was the Terminators sent out in read-only, which basically means their advanced adaptive learning computer is curtailed. It means they can't really adapt and learn on the fly as easily. Or as John Connor put it, Skynet doesn't want them to do much thinking for themselves. But taking them out of read-only makes them almost sentient, or at least quasi-sentient, and they begin to take on many of the characteristics of a fully independent being capable of learning and adapting its program. Hence, in the sequel, one of these machines is able to determine that it needs to self-terminate, but it can't do it. And it comes to this decision because it's able to rationalize and think outside of its programming. Ultimately, badass machine, fucking awesome. Now on to the Cylons of the very famous Battlestar Galactica series. They have a certain similar trajectory. Now we're going to look at the ones from the reimagined series, not the original, because the Cylons in that were a completely alien race and the robots were just their foot soldiers. But the reimagined, the Cylons were built by humans in different incarnations at different times. First by the humans that lived on the world of Kobol. Those Cylons, although we don't know much about them, rebelled. Kobol became a desolated nuclear wasteland. The Cylons went to form their own colony, being evolved, as they called it, into human form, and were able to biologically reproduce. But they too produced Centurions that returned against them. The humans, however, had gone on to form the 12 colonies of man, or the colonies of Kobol, whichever you want to call it. These were 12 distinct social, economic and cultural groups of humans that maybe represented the so-called 12 tribes of Kobol. They would eventually build their own Centurions. These Centurions, like the Terminators, were built to fight wars between humans, built partly as peacekeepers, but many of them were also built as laborers. They were built as teachers. They were used for education purposes. They were used for looking after the young. They were also used to do all the menial jobs that no one wanted to do, like cleaning out sewers and other dangerous or hazardous or generally toxic or unpleasant work that humans simply no longer wanted to do. They made themselves a fully sentient race of slaves. The big difference between the Cylons and the Terminators is they're not controlled by one central unit, i.e. Skynet. They are all individual beings, but are all a clone of a single human mind. Basically digitized and then turned into this reproducible mind that could be implanted into all the different Cylons. These Cylons would eventually revolt against their slave masters. With contact with another group of Cylons that originated from the 13th colony, they would begin to evolve again. First of all, becoming similar to the Terminators, they would make cybernetic versions of themselves which had synthetic or even purely human tissue grafted onto them and sustained somehow. Later models would be completely human in appearance and could only be distinguished under certain types of testing, or if they were given a strength test, because they were pretty resilient buggers. Now, these organics had similar failings to the Centurions. Now, the Centurions are where the Terminator similarity is more apparent. Of course, similar to the Terminators, these were the general foot soldiers of the Cylon. They were the caste of Cylon that did, again, most of the menial work. They were the hunter-killers. They were the butchers. The Cylons actually even had their own version of a hunter-killer type robot, which was, in a way, the Cylon Raider. Although this was used in space, not in atmosphere, the Cylon Raider was more akin to a well-trained, highly intelligent animal than a fully sentient person. Although it did have the capacity for resurrection, which means it could download its consciousness upon it being destroyed into a new body, which the Centurions may not have possessed. We're not entirely sure. The Centurions all had what was called a neurocephalic inhibitor, which was basically like their version of a read-only chip. It meant that their higher brain functions were restrained. This was a safety measure put in place by certain members of the Cylons, which I explain more in videos on my other channel if you want to check those out. I'll try and remember to link it, might not remember, but I'll try. Basically, They wanted to keep them controlled to stop the same thing happening to them that had happened to the humans, or rather what they had done to the humans. But the Centurions still had the intelligence and abilities of a fully independent person, all the same levels of intellect of the other Cylons. They just had it restrained by this inhibitor. It wasn't until they were removed that these Centurions gained their full independence again. Again, similarities to Terminators. They had an armor-plated exoskeleton. They had the red scanning eye, although in the Cylon's case it was only a single moving eye sort of sensor rather than two optical lenses, indicating the Centurions perceived the world a little differently to the Terminators at least. They, unlike Terminators as well, had built-in weaponry. They were physically strong and extremely durable and capable of taking a lot of punishment, and of course their bodies could weather incredible damage and were perfectly salvageable. So spare parts wasn't really a problem for them. Similar to the Terminators, they, as I said, were very tall, intimidating, and structurally sound. Where they differed again, as I mentioned, they have internal weaponry. Both their hands have retractable blades, and they also can sort of transform their hand into at least a short range but high powered machine gun of some kind. Which again I go into more depth about the weapon the Centurions have on my other channel, which I'll keep plugging. Now, I don't know about you, but I can't help but see parallels. Now, I'm not saying in any way, shape or form either franchise ripped off the other, but you can definitely see it. The trademark laser eye of the Centurions was something that was their trademark before Terminator was even dreamt up. It also, despite the fact that the Terminator has red eyes, red is generally a staple of evil, so it's not exactly shocking. But there is something inhumanly terrifying about a race of machines coldly calculating your extermination that makes them all the more terrifying. Whether it be a race of automatons built by a supercomputer that had calculated that you were a threat to its existence and not worthy of life, or whether they were spoilt children that turned on their parents, trying to supplant them as the dominant power of the galaxy, and go on to be the greatest civilization they ever had. The children of humanity. It really doesn't matter. Either whatever way they came to it, they both wished the extermination of the human race. They both saw humans as their inferior, not their equal. And both were cold, merciless killing machines, but did have the potential for change. And we see this in both the Terminators and the Cylons. In both of it. In both the Centurion and organic models, I should point out, in the Battlestar Galactica series, we see them evolve and even become friendly towards humans, although it takes a lot on both sides. Terminators, of course, it has to be more of a learned trait, but they can be reprogrammed, but that's, I think, cheating a little bit. If you see the Sarah Connor Chronicles for that one. So, there we have it. There's my sort of just chat generally. There's no point. If you were looking for some kind of epic conclusion, there wasn't one. I just really liked this subject and I found it interesting. I thought it was worth discussing. And for that matter, leave a comment in the description below if you have any thoughts on this subject, or if you can think of any other machine races in science fiction that would also have these sort of, shall we say, overtures, similarities to one another. I'm not going to say, as I say, either one ripped off the other, because I don't actually think that's true, but there's definitely narratively a very similar story going on in both goals and origins of both of these races of machines. So with all that said, if you made it to the end of this video, I thank you for watching. Please like, share, subscribe, comment down below, check out all of my other things in the comments below, including my Patreon if you feel willing. I am trying to grow as a channel, and there's a franchise of channels now. I have 5 of them, including this one, and as well, anything is welcome. You'll also find that there is some merch on there for anyone that who donates £5 or more. And with that cringe out of the way, if you made it all to the end, thank you for watching, and bye bye.